This is the last session about survey methods, and in this session we will discuss mixed mode or hybrid surveys. Mixed mode or hybrid surveys are increasingly popular in recent years because market researchers often realize that respondents should be treated like customers. So researchers try to match the data collection mode to the convenience of the respondent. If respondents don't have internet access, for example, you can reach them by traditional telephone or face-to-face surveys. Whereas a large part of the population that does have internet access, you can reach with online surveys. So by combining these different traditional methods into more of a mixed mode survey method, you're going to be benefiting from all of the strengths that each of these survey methods brings. So the main advantage is really that you have multiple benefits, multiple advantages to achieve your overall data collection goal because you combine so many different methods. The downside is that the mode in which you administer the survey could affect the response. For example, would consumers answer differently when they are part of an in-home interview with a personal interviewer versus respondents who conduct more of an online survey or answer more of an impersonal survey method? So of course, this could play a role in how respondents answer certain questions. So in this way, you don't have a uniform way of asking questions because you split them up and ask them questions in a different way. It also creates an additional level of complexity on the researcher's side. So researchers have to create different versions of surveys, some that are appropriate for online surveying, some for person-to-person surveys. So the wording often has to be adjusted depending on the mode. So overall, when you're trying to make a decision which survey method fits your needs best, there's a couple factors that you can take into consideration. First of all, time and money that you have available for data collection. Often, online survey research methods are more affordable and faster, way faster than the traditional face-to-face or telephone survey methods. Also, the type of respondent interaction that is required can play a role in your choice of survey method. If you want respondents to sample a product, to try something out at home, then of course you're going to be needing an in-home survey. If you want respondents to view a digital ad or view a video of an advertisement, you can actually do an online survey because you can incorporate that video material or print material into the online survey. So it really all depends on what level of interaction you need from your respondent. Cultural and infrastructural considerations can actually also play a role, in the sense that in some cultures, people might be a bit apprehensive to let strangers into their home. So in that case, an in-home survey might not be ideal. Or infrastructural considerations. Think of, for example, the expansion of telephone networks. If in certain rural areas, they may not have telephone access or Wi-Fi access, in those cases, you may need to do an in-person survey rather than using technology. So it all depends on the target audience you're working with. And then lastly, incidence rate plays a role as well. Incidence rate basically means that the variable you're looking for can be concentrated or can be very dispersed in certain areas. If a large percentage of a population possesses a certain characteristic that you're looking for in survey research, we call this high incidence rate. That means you have a high density of people with that characteristic in a certain area. Of course, if incidence rate is low, that means that a certain characteristic that you're looking for is very dispersed, is very spread out and not very concentrated in certain areas. So let me give you an example of what that could look like. First of all, incidence rate in the general sense of the word, meaning how densely populated are certain areas, can be shown in this map. This map by the US Census Bureau shows the density of the population in certain counties. So you can see San Diego County is very dense, LA County, and so on. The San Francisco Bay Area is pretty dense, Seattle, and then a bunch of spots on the East Coast and the South as well. So this is where the majority of the US population lives. Really interesting because, of course, if you want to collect a lot of respondents for your research, it's in those denser areas that you're going to be looking for respondents. And this is incidence rate without taking into account a specific characteristic. This is just overall density of a population. But when we zoom in on specific characteristics, maps can look very different. For example, the incidence rate of football league fandom. You can see where the strongest fans are of each team. So you can see the 49ers, mostly in Northern California, Cowboys in Texas, and so on. So you see where the density of Cowboy fans versus 49ers fans versus Seahawks, where their highest concentration is. So, for example, if you want to do a survey among, let's say, people who are fan of the 49ers, you're probably better off finding them in Northern California rather than, let's say, on the East Coast. Or incidence rate in terms of the density of people or the concentration of people that commute to work by walking or biking. So you see that the highest concentration of people commuting in these ways are in Alaska, Hawaii, Oregon, Washington, and a few states on the East Coast. Or the density of elderly population. So where's the highest concentration of people 65 and older? Again, for research purposes, this could be very useful in case you want to tailor your research or focus on people that are retired, 65 and older. In that case, you know which states you can find the highest concentration of them. Americans' political ideology. So you can see where most conservative versus most liberal people reside in the United States. So in which states there is the highest concentration of people that consider themselves liberal versus conservative. And there's many more maps. You know by now that I'm a total map geek. This is a map that shows income inequality. So income of the top 1% and the bottom 99%. So it really shows you the wealth gap between people, and you see that this is the strongest in California, Nevada, Texas, a few other states. Really interesting as well. Gender pay gap, where is the gender pay gap the highest? And what else do we have here? Oh, I included one final map, which is most common language spoken at home other than English or Spanish. So if you take English and Spanish out of the equation, what is the most commonly spoken language in each state? So again, for research purposes, if you want to find people who speak German or speak Vietnamese, then actually, according to this map, you find the highest concentrations of these people in states that are marked with the blue color versus Tagalog. You find more in California and Nevada. So that was session 4 of the class about survey research methods.